wasn't paying attention, but I've been in.
Call this meeting of the Davenport School Board to order. Communications items. Open forum. Please follow the steps below to participate in the open forum. Dial 1-563-445-5000. Conference ID 2541672. Identify yourself by stating your name and address. The board president will acknowledge you and allow you 2 minutes to speak. Please keep in mind that board members do not respond to comments made in open forum. You can view the meeting by clicking on that link below. Is there anyone wishing to speak at open forum?
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Kendall Matson, 207 North Parker Street, Walcott, Iowa.
I need for him to slow that down, and I need him to spell
Okay.
his name out.
Okay, Kendall, you need to slow down a little bit and spell your name for Mary.
Sure. It's Kendall, Kendall, Matson, Mattson.
And your address?
Address?
207 North Parker Street, Walcott, Iowa.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kendall.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to make a comment, maybe just for the board's awareness, and I appreciate the board's time for offering me this time. I'm referring to a couple sections in the master contract between the DEA and the Davenport schools, and they are sections 13.154 and 13.172, and they are referring to new hires. And what they state is new hires shall have the right to exercise a transfer option after 3 years of district employment and successful completion of the probation period. So what I would like maybe the board think of in the future for contracts, if there could be some type of provision for half-time contract employees, because the way this is written and interpreted right now, if a person is a half-time contract employee, they have to remain half-time for 3 years before they can apply for another job. And I'm not sure if that was the intention or maybe an oversight, but maybe going forward, the board can maybe consider that in future negotiations, because I don't think it's fair that someone would have to work part-time contract teacher for 3 years before they get apply for a full-time position. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time, board.
Thank you, Kendall. Anyone else for open forum? Okay, open forum is closed. Ready for the TAG presentation? We now have a presentation from TAG Communications.
So if I may, Mr. President, in terms of an introduction, the district may recall that at the end of the last school year, it disbanded its communications department. There were a number of individuals who were working in that department. When I arrived in August, we needed to move in a positive direction, knowing that communication with our community was critical to our success moving forward. And after a lengthy vetting process of outside agencies that we felt could meet our needs, we selected TAG. And I think what you'll find out today is that turned out to be a very fortuitous decision for dramatic effect, right? Fortuitous decision. And we'll hear from TAG today as to how the year has unfolded in terms of perception for the school district and in the work that's been done. So my thanks to Mike Vonder and Ann Spodens, who's here today, and appreciate all the hard work. There's been a lot going on in a lot of different contexts that have required communications. And communications isn't just working with our media outlets. It's talking and working with our parents. It's also having our internal communications practices and protocols, which I've been pleased with this year also. But we thought now that we've finished the school year, it would be good to give the school district a sense of what's been done and some metrics that you can actually sink your teeth into that will actually explain some things that have been changing in the district that aren't just anecdotal, the actual data that we can rely on. So, Ann, I'll just turn things over to you if that's okay. Thank you for coming, and Michael, thank you for being here.
Good evening. Thanks for giving us the time to talk a little bit about the communication strategy for this past year. I wanted to give an overview on what's been accomplished over the past year, the foundation that we've set for communications, and then what's to come as we look forward to return to learn and the next academic school year. So in front of you, you have some data about the overall communications plan that happened during the past school year. The data that you'll see in your packet represents the period from October 14th, 2019, which is when TAG received access to all of the social media accounts, through June 14th, 2020. And you'll see a lot of up arrows in your board packet. That is compared to the same period in last school year. So October 14th, 2018 through June 14th, 2019. So overall, I'm going to break it down by platform for you. On Facebook, we posted more than 400 unique pieces of content to that platform. All of this was in the last 8 months. We focused on communication updates, photos, and really important information that was relevant to parents and students, as well as staff within the Davenport Community School District. Our goal in social media, especially on Facebook, was to showcase how the district is growing excellence. Aside from just an increased posting strategy, we also wanted to use that platform as an opportunity to listen and learn from parents, students, and staff as well. So lots of comments were happening on social media, lots of messages were received. Our goal is to always respond to messages that we've received within 24 hours. We've gotten very good at researching where all of that information is found and responding to people as quickly as we possibly can. It was also a great opportunity for us to listen and learn to people on that platform too. The Facebook page audience has grown by 14% year over year, which is a growth of about 1,000 fans. When I actually lump that into the past 2 years combined, your Facebook presence for the Davenport Community School District has grown 66% over the past 2 years. I also, before COVID-19 shut schools, we also had a Facebook and Instagram story series that highlighted what's happening in the Davenport Community School District. And what that did was it compiled all of the updates that we provided over the past week and put them in an easy to digest form for parents and students. Wanted to break down Facebook a little bit further for you and go about impressions. So overall impressions were about 2.2 million over the course of that 8 months. Those mean eyeballs seeing the contents on the Facebook page. We also had a 168% increase in engagements year over year with 271,263 engagements. And by engagements, we mean likes, comments, shares, clicks on the post, etc. Wanted to give you a breakdown here of the published posts as well. Posted 405 pieces of unique content, which was a 135% increase in the amount of content generated on that platform year over year. On the next page, if you scroll down a little bit, you will see in that time period, so October through June, the top 3.
You can use that right there.
Oh, thank you.
Control that.
I should have brought my
Yeah.
glasses. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Mary. You'll see the top 3 pieces of content that were posted during that time frame. So the first was actually submitted by one of the educators at Harrison Elementary, which was just a photo that was snapped in the hallway, and that actually reached more than 41,000 people. And you'll see in your packet that there were about 3,200 reactions on that and almost 200 comments. What was really neat about this piece of content is it was so simple, just a photo taken in the hallway, but we got hundreds of comments of former students and people who worked in that building who are reminiscing about their experience at Harrison as well. Second piece of content I think we can all relate to was when Governor Reynolds recommended that all schools close through the end of April. A lot of questions and opinions from parents on that post, which you'll see lots of comments there. And then the third most popular piece of content in that time frame was actually a photo thanking the school district's food and nutrition services team for all of the hard work that they did to step up and feed our community during the school closure. What we actually did was that piece of content did so well that we capitalized on that. And my team actually worked directly with Connie Dobbles from Food and Nutrition Services to gain more content around food service. And a few weeks ago, we actually posted a piece of content that they served more than 226,000 meals while schools were closed. And the community reaction to that was very, very positive. Also wanted to give a quick highlight here on the total number of video views. As you probably recall, during school closure, we did a COVID-19 video series with Dr. Kabilski that was put on YouTube. We also organically put those videos on Facebook. And you'll see a comparative of this year's view metrics were about 141,000 compared to last year's total views of 1,800 on Facebook. Oops, sorry. I have a Mac, so I'm a little backwards here. Also wanted to share some interesting insights about how the school district compares to other local districts. We have a proprietary software. We can actually analyze content posted and growth for other districts. You'll see that we have just labeled them A, B, C, and D because it is a proprietary software. But overall, the Davenport Community School District's Facebook page grew at the fastest rate amongst any of our local school districts at close to 14%, gaining just over 1,000 fans. We'll also see that overall you had a higher engagement rate. Oh my gosh. Than other school districts as well. At the top column there, you'll see the competitor average, how many posts the average competitor or other school district put out during the same time period, and the average number of engagements. So overall, if you average that out, that's about 1 post per day during the school year. We're posting significantly more than that. For us, consistency is key. We are tasked with helping to change the narrative, specifically through social media, and posting more often and consistently to help change that narrative is truly working. For us, posting doesn't stop during the summertime. We've got a lot of important pieces of communication, especially with the Return to Learn plan that are going to be going out in social media over the next couple of weeks. Jumping into Twitter, the Davenport Schools actually has a smaller following on Twitter, much smaller than we actually do on Facebook. But we'll see that as, while you're not growing at as fast of a rate on Twitter as you are on Facebook, you still gain a significant amount of Twitter followers, growing by 30% in the past 8 months to over 1,400 followers. But impressions and engagements truly skyrocketed, over 343,000 impressions, which was almost a 400% increase on Twitter, and then 20,593 engagements compared to the previous year that was under 6,000. On 356 total pieces of content on Twitter, basically our strategy here was taking all of the content that we had engineered on Facebook, re-engineering that for Twitter, and then we also engaged with community partners, lots of athletic teams within the district posting, as well as individual schools. Top 3 pieces of content on Twitter were all about the COVID-19 closures of schools and online learning resources. Also wanted to do a similar breakdown with the Twitter comparison. Through our software, we can't actually compare engagements from the Davenport Schools Twitter platform to other school districts. What we can do is compare growth rates. So the average competitor actually lost 2 Twitter fans in that period, whereas the district gained 323 at a rate of 23% growth. Also in December 2019, we launched an Instagram platform for the district. We have nearly 800 followers. I actually think before I left it was at 799, so hopefully we can get 1 more follower tonight. But our goal on this platform is to take some of the content, photos, and videos that we've seen on Facebook and Twitter and repopulate them onto a platform that we know a younger demographic is following. We've also created some highlight reels within Instagram for academics, the arts, and athletics following the new brand. On YouTube, 10 unique videos were posted to the district's YouTube page during school closure that were viewed nearly 35,000 times during that period. We actually grew the subscriber count by 600 people, so now you have 725 total channel subscribers on YouTube. On community relations, what we did was a spot coverage of stories from January 1 through June 11th, 2020 for any stories that mention the school district. This does not include any sort of athletic mentions. This is strictly school district when it comes to academics as well as the board. So doing a spot check of that local media coverage, overall coverage of the Davenport Community School District was 78% positive. When I say positive, that means an actual positive mention of the district and how you're growing excellence, as well as stories that simply are giving information with no opinion to them. So a great example of that would be the summer meal program. When that information was released, we saw coverage across all of our news and print stations, and it was simply providing that information back to the public with no opinion associated to it. If we look at some what I'll call non-favorable content that happened during that same time period, a lot of it was reflecting on budget cuts that were associated with the SBRC, some information about Lincoln School, and then a few incidents that happened within the schools as well. I think our biggest change here on the community relations side with our media partners is that we have an unwritten rule with our team that no comment is never allowed. So if a media partner reaches out to us about a story or a comment from the district, we always do our best to provide some sort of resource or comment back, or connecting them with the correct person to be able to provide a comment from the district on that story. Our team also attends or streams in COVID-19 every single local board meeting, as well as every state board meeting and SBRC meeting, so that we can be in the loop about whatever communications need to happen after the fact. And then finally, brand development. Obviously, a new brand was unveiled in February 2020. The new brand featured a new logo, brand promise, core values, mission, and vision, and a full brand guide was developed that highlights all the proper usage of the brand and how it's to be executed across not only the district, but all of the individual schools as well. In conjunction with that new brand, there's new artwork across all of the social media platforms, and a brand new website is under development right now that we're hoping to still launch here in summer 2020. That new website is going to be much easier for parents to find information, for internal staff to find information, and for students to be able to access information that they need. All of it is providing a greater opportunity for bidirectional communication, and the website will be compliant as well, meaning if someone has an issue with reading text on screen, they'll still be able to access the website and all of the information within it. I also wanted to provide a quick update on some of the things that are going to be coming up with the communications plan as well. Over the past year, we've really gotten a chance to review the communication structures and protocols within the district, and have provided some recommendations back to the district about how that may change in the coming year. Overall, we know that each individual school does need some autonomy about how it can communicate with parents effectively, but overall, any major decisions that are made or announcements that need to be made both internally and externally really need to go through district communications first to create a core singular message that then resonates down through the schools from there. I put a little simple graphic here of that hierarchy of how we envision that going moving forward. And beginning in summer 2020, we will actually have a physical office within the ASC as well that allows people to schedule office hours with communications, have brainstorming sessions with us, and bounce ideas. Those have been happening regularly already prior to COVID, but this just gives another opportunity for us to be inside the building and help facilitate those communications needs. We'll also be doing a communications training with the board. You guys are great ambassadors for the district, and we want to make sure that you also have the communication tools available to you to help share the district message. When the new website is launched in summer 2020, we'll also be introducing some new methods of communication within that, one of them being a blog. This will be a great opportunity for not only the district's perspective on communications, but also to get additional people involved. So maybe in the past on the current website that was used as the superintendent's corner, now it's going to be a voice for people within the district and our community to talk about what's happening within the Davenport schools. So not only teachers and educators and staff posting, but even the board having access to write articles for that, students, parents, and community leaders as well. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Return to Learn communications plan as well. I know that's a big part of tonight's agenda. What we did was actually worked with the district team as well as the AEA to create this Return to Learn communications plan. What we've done is actually outlined with guidance from the state all of the different audiences that we have, the platforms that we have to communicate, and the different messages that need to be communicated throughout this entire process. We know that Return to Learn, the communication is getting people back into school, but it goes so far beyond that as well. So what we've done is create a structured plan for that with help from all of the people within the district that outlines how important information is going to be disseminated to all of our different stakeholder groups. We also see on the screen that we've created a unique sub-brand specifically for Return to Learn. So when that messaging goes out, it stands out from other district messaging and people know this is important information and need to pay attention to that.
And that was excellent. Thank you. Could I just ask you to comment briefly on the evolution of the content and how our staff has embraced the idea of pushing things your way, where in the beginning perhaps we were trying to find stories and how that's evolved over the year and staff involvement in this process?
Absolutely. I think, anything can be a story. We can take simple pieces of content like a student standing in the hallway and turn that into a really great story. And one thing that I have really appreciated with working with the district is that they're consistently feeding content to my team to be able to put out on these platforms. Even during school closures, we were getting emails like crazy of videos that teachers and administrators had created in order to still connect with students on social media throughout the closure process. So I think we've done a really good job of making sure that people know where to go if they have a communication need or have a story to tell. But we have even more recommendations about how to better implement that as we continue to move forward into next school year.
Any questions or comments from the board? I know when I was first hired 10 months ago, one of the biggest tasks and challenges was to change public perception and pushing out. The complaint was there's so many positive things happening in the district, yet we open up the newspaper and it's the negative story or the negative comment. And I think we're turning the corner. We still have more of the corner to turn, but I think we've made significant strides, and I think the data suggests that, especially with the 78% positive stories. So that's helpful. But board member, Mr. President, turn it over to you.
Director Klein-Jerome?
I have a question about, like, I follow West High Beacon Eye newspaper. I follow Central High Vocal Music Theater Department. Are you saying that they will have to go through you before they put it on Facebook?
I am simply saying for major announcements. So return to learn plan type of communications.
Okay.
When school was closed, those communications need to be district first and then disseminated down to schools and clubs.
So they'll be able to
They can still post their
do
own
there.
content, Yep. And actually, that's great fuel for us as well because we actually search for all of that content online, and anything that is of value we put back on the district page as well.
And on the district's page, will there be an easy to follow calendar of events so you know the high schools are doing this sports activity or this musical or this band spectacular way, so that people can easily access that and not have to hunt and search when things are going on?
Yes, on the new website, it will be much easier for people to find information. We've had extensive discussions with the website team from the district as well as TAG's team about how to make the website simple to use for anyone and everyone. And the calendar situation was a big part of that discussion. So I know that they're working on that, and it will be much easier to find information when that launches.
Thank you.
Director Beck?
So one thing I have kind of wondered about since you guys first came to us with your brand package is the photos in our logo. They look like stock photos, and I'm wondering if we have a plan to turn those into photos of actual Davenport students, and preferably students that look like all of the students in the district.
That's a great question. Yes is the answer. This brand was actually built with a lot of flexibility to it, which is awesome. So all of those photos per brand guidelines can be removed and replaced with any other photos as long as we follow the same color grids that are associated with the logo. So yes, as we talk about evolution of the brand moving into the next calendar year, that will definitely be something that will be on the table.
After the board meeting, I'll be happy to open the doors to the hallway over there, and you'll see the next graphic that was put up, and I think it speaks to exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, perfect. And then my other question, oh shoot, I just lost it. Sorry. If I come back to, it couldn't have been that important. So if I think of it again, I'll ask.
Anyone else? Director Gosa?
As far as like Facebook and all that stuff, when you put the post out, are they available in other languages as well?
So they're put out in English, but anyone can choose their language on Facebook based on how they'd like to communicate. So if I set my settings to Spanish, that post will auto-translate in Spanish.
Okay. Now what about the website?
The website will be translated as well, and I believe
Do
I will have
do
to
it
double
through,
check.
like Google Translate, do you actually have someone, because Google Translate doesn't always get it right.
It can be a little iffy. I understand that. I would have to go back and ask our web team specifically what platform they're using, but I know that that was a huge consideration in the website as well. And we've actually talked to the team internally about making sure that each individual article on the website is pre-translated and available for download as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we have several different languages.
Yes.
In this. And then my other question, how are you?
Dan, you need to talk into the mic.
I thought I was yelling. How are you attracting all the followers? Are you guys using cookies through like Google and all that, and then they're just generically picking them up?
Yeah, we definitely saw a spike in increase of bad word choice, an increase in followers when schools closed for COVID-19 because a lot of resources were shared through social media as well as through the auto dialer email program. But people were going to social media to find that information, so people were sharing it onto community resource pages, sharing it to their friends, tagging people, and that kind of naturally increased the followers over time. We've also really tried on Twitter to make sure that if we are talking about a specific athletic team or a specific student, that we're tagging them if possible in that tweet to kind of expand the message a little bit further as well. So both of those strategies have helped us just naturally and organically increase those followings.
Okay, I know
And Instagram we haven't promoted at all, and we're
that's super hard. You got to feed the beast a lot to keep.
so we're
relevant.
800 on $7.99.
No, you got to feed that beast relevant.
Yeah.
Like every day. Twitter's a hard one to crack too because people only get on it for their interest or whatever. I'm actually doing a social media campaign in my actual job. That's how I know so much about this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Hayes.
Thank you so much for that, Ian, and also thanks again for the update. I love the new logo there. You had mentioned the increase in YouTube with the, since COVID has been going, YouTube has been going more with the board meetings and Dr. K's messages. And there's, with that increase, when we get back to normal, whatever that is, will we continue to go YouTube with those meetings?
Well, I think there's kind of two different paths here. One is just the district itself and promoting the academics, arts, and athletics. YouTube will still be a big part of our strategy. As we looked at the Facebook metrics of views this year, I think it was 141,000 versus last year of 1,800. We know that people are consuming more video. It's just the natural tendency of how people consume media now. We've learned a lot of lessons from Dr. Kabilski's videos as well. We've had some parents comment about the length of videos, so we're taking all of that feedback into consideration and using that to move forward. On the school board side, that's really up to you guys, but I think people do like having the access of information and being able to go back and watch that video again. That's just my opinion though.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck.
I remembered what my question was because Director Gosa reminded me. So it's about translation, and I know this may not just be you guys, but I know one of the things that came up during Return to Learn planning was having all of our within a school announcements, flyers, and everything pre-translated into multiple languages and not, a week after the fact or whatever. So it requires a lot more planning to make sure that, you can't just come up with something and send it home the next day if you have to pre-translate it. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out what kinds of, do you guys have services that you can use that are fast enough? Are you able to take advantage of some of our own students and staff who are bilingual in a variety of languages? So it's not just Spanish. I know we have a lot of students who speak a lot of other languages as well.
I actually had the opportunity to sit at the DSAT meeting last week where we talked specifically about Return to Learn, and communications was a part of that. And we definitely heard loud and clear that translation is a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to the Return to Learn plan. Communication. So that actually is in the formal plan for communications. And we do know that it takes 2 to 3 days often to get those translated. So it's about being a little bit more plotted and planned with those messages. There are things that are going to come up on the fly sometimes. And we learned that during COVID-19. So a lot of important communications during that were based on, the governor made an announcement and we need to get an announcement out within the hour. So during those times, it was a little bit harder to get the translations, but moving forward, we've heard loud and clear that needs to be an integral part of this plan, and we're taking that into consideration when anything is crafted.
I'll just jump in quickly from an internal resource perspective. We've had that capability and continue to do so. So, for example, you probably noticed in the Return to Learn plan, one of the interrelated pieces was to have a survey of our community and of our parents we knew that survey had to be translated into Vietnamese and into Spanish. And you're right, what that does, it just extends the process for 2 to 3 days. But we have the internal capacity to do that and support TAG in any way that they need that.
Clyde, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I did not.
Thank you. Dan?
I was thinking this as everybody was talking. What happens to the negative comments? Do they get left on there? Do they get regulated? And then does someone keep track? Because obviously if you're getting the same negative comment, then there's an issue and it needs to be looked into. So where does that information go to?
That's a very good question. We don't hide anything that would be deemed negative. If someone is cursing or using inappropriate language, that automatically gets removed from the page because it violates the standards that we've set up for the page. But if someone just has an opinion that doesn't agree with what the district has put out, that's their opinion, and we're not going to take that down. I think an important aspect of social media is listening and learning to people. And the more people comment and engage, the more you can learn from them, and it really helps fuel future communication. So I think Dr. K can probably attest that I've emailed him many a weekend or nighttime with a comment that I've seen that says, hey, this is a series of comments that we've seen. Here's some things that we need to address internally moving forward. And that's been our process. But yeah, we don't, if someone disagrees with us, that's their opinion, but we want to learn from it and figure out how we use that information to make us better.
Okay. I guess as a board, I would like to see that every, maybe like monthly or something. Hey, this is the list of or whatever. So.
And one thing I'll say too is this is a holistic report of the last 8 months, but moving forward, we'll be doing them monthly. We also know that data collection about making sure that every student is reached with communications for return to learn is really important. So we'll be pulling data a lot more often on that as well.
Okay. And one last thing, why does it take a couple days to translate something? Because if I do something, I send it to a guy and he has it back to me within a few hours, because there's different dialects and stuff, especially in Spanish. But I'm trying to understand, if you send something, obviously it has to be reworded, and sometimes I'll put it in Google Translate and then they'll correct the stuff. So why does it take 2 to 3 days? Because that's way too long. It should be like right now. I mean, we're in the technology age.
I do not have an answer for that. That's an internal question.
So we use several ways of translating. We have our cultural liaisons do translations, but again, that's only part of their job. And they're working with families, calling families, and to stop in the middle of doing something, they may be in an IEP meeting to translate. It's just not possible. We also use an outside organization called ITech to do that. And when you start looking at some of the languages that we need, like Swahili, it takes a little longer to send it out. They have to send it to someone. By the time we get it back, it is about 2 to 3 days. So we're trying a lot of different ways and approaches that we can do things. Trying to do Google Translate, as I agree, it's not the best. But if we can reword some of our things for simple sentences, as like I tell my department, use the elevator speech, Google Translate does pretty good that way. And so we're working on a variety of resources and ways that we can do that. But I think the big thing is, you know, we count on someone else to do it for us. We don't really have anybody that's their job to translate.
Okay.
Their
So
sole job.
is that something we like outsource out? We pay them to do that?
We pay them to do it, yes, we do.
I guess I'll make a board request on this later, but I'd like to know how much we spend on that, if it'd just be cheaper to get someone on staff that does that. Because I would feel that lag time, we're not catering to. I mean, we're a very well diversified district. We should figure out a way to reach people at least within a day, maybe a day and a half. But I appreciate you answering the question, but obviously that's something that we need to look into on how we can get better about that.
I would agree, and it's something that's part of my goal for this coming school year, looking at some other ways we could communicate with our families. And that train, there's one I've looked at where we can send a text message out and it translated in all the languages, and you only have to type it in English. The family can respond back in their native language, and it translates it back in English. But there's a cost associated with that, and I'm not sure how well it are they using Google Translate? I mean, I'm sure they're probably not using somebody that when you send that message out, because it's instantaneous. So it's probably some type of computer software, but is it better than Google Translate? And again, if we can teach our staff to use the elevator speech, those tend to translate much better through some type of software rather than some of the things that we tend to use educational ease and flowery language, which doesn't always translate well.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
So we've got a plan in place. It's just going to take us some time to get there, but we do need to get better.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I was just going to pipe in and say, I think also some of the issue, Dan, is that translation, there's certificates, like it's a skilled job in many cases. And so it costs a lot of money to get good translators or good translation services. So it may just be cost prohibitive for us to get somebody who can translate every language within a couple hours. I know within the schools, they often will use, if they have somebody on staff who is bilingual, they'll use that person to translate flyers if they need it done quickly. But that's really just a volunteer thing, and you can't count on it. So.
And we do have with iTech, I call it on demand. It's over the phone. So there's 32 languages that are common in the Quad City area, and you dial this number, punch in a code, and you get an interpreter right there, and you can have a 3-way conversation right away. The cost is $1.45 a minute to do that. But it does allow us, if someone comes into our school and they want to register or enroll in the district and they speak Portuguese, we have no one on staff for that, but we could use this over the phone and be able to get them enrolled and let them know what we need from them and kind of the next steps. Then it's now, where do we go from there to find someone who can help us with the translations?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
In my line of work, I have to do that all the time. I either text or I have to call someone and do a 3-way call. I pick up on some of it, but sometimes I don't. I know there's different dialects, and if you say one thing one way, it means something totally different. So.
Yeah. Well, lockdown is something that doesn't translate into Vietnamese or Spanish. So we have an emergency protocol that we have translated in basically 5 languages that we are giving to our parents this fall so that they have that. And when you get an auto dialer and it says lockdown, at least the parents have that to go back to refer to help them. But yeah, there's a lot of things in education that just do not translate at all.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions for the TAG folks? Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Director Beck has seconded. Any discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Pine Jerome,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Mayfield, Director Mayfield,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the consent agenda is approved. May I have a motion on the approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board adopt the administration recommendation for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of 5/21/20 to 6/3/20 and 6/4/20 to 6/17/20. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of May 21st, 2020 to June 3rd, 2020, and June 4th, 2020 to June 17th, 2020.
is there a second?
Second.
Director Hayes seconds. Any discussion? Director Pondro.
Claudia, I've got a couple questions. First of all, I want to say thank you for all your service and good luck on your retirement. We truly will miss you. Let's see, my first question is, what is BMO-P-CARD that comes up repeatedly, like $45,000, and what is that paying?
BMO is the Bank of Montreal. It's the bank that has our P card, our purchasing card program, which is basically our district credit cards.
Okay. I noticed that we were paying Durham $301,183, and that was paid on June 3rd, but we haven't had any busing service for 3 months.
That was the agreed upon rate after some discussion with our attorney and their attorney to compensate them under the terms of our contract for their overhead for the people they still had on staff working, the management, and then getting geared up to start setting up routes and everything for next year. So it is a prorated amount compared to what we would have been paying. Yeah.
Okay. HYA, Hazard Young, ITI, I'm not sure what it is. We have had multiple amounts charged to it, and do we have a contract with them, or?
Yeah, the most recent payment was for the contract we had with them for the search for the new human resources director.
Okay, so there were 3 amounts. One was like $3,000, and then there's one for $6,000, and another one for $6,000. So, I mean, do we have a limit? I mean, the board has never approved a contract with them. That's, I guess, my question.
I don't have the details in front of me. I could pull that contract. I'm going to assume some of it was the set contract amount and some of it would have been other expenses like for running advertising in different publications, that type of thing. I can get the detail for you.
Okay, it's just,
I could answer that in a little bit more detail. So the original contract with Hazard Young and Atia was for $12,500 to conduct the search, and that's for the services of their search consultant, who happened to be Ted Blazing, and that's their fee as an organization. There are additional charges that I will describe as a la carte charges. Knowing we wanted to do a national search for an HR director, we posted the HR position in a number of national publications, and that's why you saw the $3,000 fee. We also, and again, it was my decision to do a background check, which is conducted by Baker Hughes, which is a very extensive background check organization, and that's the fee you see for the $6,000 in there. They do a very thorough and investigative background check on all employees. And when it comes to HR, as you can imagine, that's a very critical role in the district, making sure that we have someone who's quite capable and we know everything we need to know about that particular individual. So those are additional costs that were not part of the original contract.
okay, and so we're gonna have like one separate contract for HR and then a separate contract for CFO, is that correct?
Right, so we'll have a brand new contract for
Okay.
CFO. That'll probably, I haven't seen the exact dollar figure, but I suspect it'll be around
Similar.
$12,500. And then again, we're looking at doing a national search, so I suspect it'll be a $3,000
Same.
national publications, because you have to pay to be in certain magazines and things to that effect. And again, the CFO position is another one of those that a Baker search. You do Baker searches for superintendents also. Very thorough, very extensive background check that if you've ever seen one of those, you'd be impressed at the work that they do.
Okay. Lane and Waterman is listed as lawyer/negotiations, but we are employing Ehlers and Cooney. So why is it listed as lawyer/negotiations when they are not involved in our negotiations?
I think that's just the default description that's on the account code for attorneys and negotiations.
Yeah.
And then just one, we paid Care Animal Center, which is a vet. I thought that's strange, but you don't have to answer that one. We took an insurance holiday in June, so are we on budget? under budget with our spending? Are we going to come in?
I
the
think
right
we're going to
spot?
be okay. There's a lot that happens after June 30th to finalize the year. So I can't say definitively, but I think we should be okay.
With the insurance holiday in June? Okay. Again, enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Director Postian.
On the busing bill for 300 and some thousand, can CARES Act money be used against that?
Well, one of the reasons we paid the bill is part of the CARES Act legislation required districts to continue paying their vendors, which we have done so. But obviously, this was a situation where Durham laid off their bus drivers, so we didn't feel compelled to be paying for bus drivers that were no longer working. So this was truly the overhead cost. I don't believe this would be part of our normal operating costs that we would pay, and I don't believe, Claudia, that this would qualify for CARES Act. I'm not seeing it fitting that classification.
Director Beck.
Since Director Klein Jerome brought it up, why do we have a vet bill?
I will check on the detail of that. My assumption would be it'd be for one of our therapy animals,
Okay.
but I will check on that for you.
Any therapy animals?
Yeah, as soon,
$146.40.
yeah, as soon as I asked that question, I realized, oh, we do have animals in the district. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Bosa,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll be as brief as I can. First things, as it's obvious to everyone, we've reopened the ASC, where we do our summer work and our summer planning for the school year. We've done so with an ASC safety and security team that has helped us engage practices and procedures that will allow for our staff to remain safe. So, for example, every morning we all have to come in the same door. We all have to take our temperature first thing in the morning, and we have sanitizers from around the building. As you can see from the audience, we participate in social distancing with that. I do believe we're 6 feet apart, but I'll scoot over just to make sure that we are on this one. But we use the ASC opening as sort of a trial run for us to practice these procedures that we may see in school buildings going into the fall. What works well, what didn't work well. My many thanks to our school nurse as well as Brenda T., who is part of the team. I know Bruce McKee was part of the team to reopen the ASC and put together the protocols that, again, is really designed to maintain the safety of our staff here in the ASC, but using it as a model for reopening our other buildings across the district. So thanks to that team, and so far, so good on that. I will announce that this week we will be opening up our outdoor athletic facilities to include our tennis courts. So I know we have a number of individuals that are looking to remain active, during this virus, and outdoor activities. We're being told both at the national, state, and even the regional level that it's safe to do so. We will have signage that reminds people to allow for appropriate social distancing when they're interacting on our facilities. But we know that our taxpayers are very adamant and deservingly so of using our facilities whenever they need to do so. So we'll be opening up our outdoor athletic facilities with the idea of maintaining their safety. The board is probably aware that we've scheduled an outdoor graduation on Brady Street Stadium and on July 19th. Let's hope for cool weather on that day. July 19th could be a little rough, but again, we will practice appropriate social distancing. There will be 4 separate graduation ceremonies. We are working on the safety protocols as we speak. I had a conversation again about it today. Again, the plan is to allow for that in-person graduation that many members of our community were craving and were disappointed with, even though we did have an absolutely wonderful video graduation. And again, thank you to TAG, who was part of the videoing process for that and getting that on Channel 6. And I know you were instrumental in getting that to happen. So again, thank you for TAG. And looking forward to seeing people face to face in a properly social distanced environment. Fortunately, we have a very large stadium that seats 8,000, and we're working out the details of exactly how many people will be allowed to go into that stadium for any one of the graduations. Just to give you an example of the type of planning that's taking place, we'll have 4 graduations. We'll use one side of the stadium for one graduation. When that graduation's done, we'll use the other side of the stadium for the next graduation. While that next graduation is prepping and getting ready, we'll have a sanitation crew on the other side cleaning from the first graduation. So just to give you a sense of how complex this is in this age of COVID viruses, our goal is to keep our community safe, and we will properly social distance and do that as best we can. Allison, question?
Sorry to interrupt, but are we limiting the number of tickets that each graduate can get, the number of people who each graduate can bring?
So we're taking that under consideration right now in the sense of we don't know how many, so we're going to conduct a survey of how many students are planning on coming. So depending on how many we would normally graduate, if we have to limit tickets, we'll make that decision based on the survey.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we don't overfill one side of the stadium with that. So that was a very good question, and we had that question a little bit earlier. But information packets will be going out to senior graduate families who wish to participate. Again, this isn't a required event. If you'd like to pick up your diploma ahead of time, they're available right now. But we certainly wanted to give our students a chance to celebrate their 4 years of success, not only at the high school, but for however long they've been in the district. So we're excited for that opportunity, although I did realize that I have to wear a black cap and gown on that day, so I'm really hoping for a cool July 19th, and we'll see how that plays out. I do want to announce an interim organizational chart that I will be distributing across the district in the next couple days. That's really designed to accomplish 2 pieces. And the one is, first of all, you may remember from the original citations from the state, there was a concern, and I know Director Gosa, you brought this up recently, of the number of direct reports that were funneled up to the superintendent. And at this point in time, through the course of this year, every single cabinet member from every department, every director reported to the superintendent. And as you saw in the citations, that was problematic. But I will also tell you from my experience this year, it proved to be a bit inefficient because there were so many conversations that needed to be held in a group, and we need to reorganize our work so that we can become more efficient and more effective. So what I've done is I've taken our 2 associate superintendents and delineated their job responsibilities into 2 categories. So for example, we will now have an associate superintendent who will be the chief operations officer, in charge of all non-academic aspects of our work here. That'll include operations, HR, LIS, and security. And Mr. Bill Schnaden will be leading that as the associate superintendent of that department. And this year we'll have a chief academic officer, which will be in charge of curriculum instruction, learning supports, and our principals with regard to teaching and learning. And Mr. Rob Scott will serve as the chief academic officer from a superintendent perspective. So those director reports that formerly were reporting to the superintendent will now report to those 2 associate superintendents. The 4 remaining direct reports to the superintendent will be those 2 associate superintendents. It'll be the executive director of special education, early childhood. As we all know, that's been a very important issue in this district, and I do believe that's a position that should be a direct report to the superintendent. And then the CFO, as Claudia Wood reports to me at this point. We'll do a very fancy picture that really shows the outline of this organizational chart and present that for the team. But I do believe that this would comply with what the state was asking us to do in terms of reorganizing our internal structure. As a matter of fact, that issue rolled over into the 2021 goal plan that Amy Williamson referred to just a couple weeks ago. Didn't get much fanfare in there, but it was still in there, which meant they were expecting that to be addressed. And I'm announcing tonight that that is being addressed. So that is something that will be announced and put forward to the rest. I wanted the board to hear it first. And now the rest of our staff will hear how that's going to play out. And then my final comment was, I would just like to reiterate my thanks and gratitude for Claudia Wood and the work that she's done here. My onboarding was required a very steep learning curve, and Claudia was kind enough to spend as much time as necessary to get me up to speed on all the Iowa. I'll say this as politely as I can, but the peculiar aspects of Iowa financing, which is different than you might see in other states, and she did that, I think, quite successfully. I will say that when we came out of our SBRC process with that positive outcome, 90% of that was Claudia Wood's legwork prior to that meeting. Not even from the past year, but even going back previous years, having an understanding of the budget, cautioning people to be mindful of their spending, and really having the confidence of the SBRC that she was presenting data and information that they could rely on. So you will be sorely missed. Please enjoy your retirement to its fullest. Be safe. No skydiving or anything like that is allowed. But please know we'd love for you to come back and visit and come and see us from time to time. So Claudia, thank you for all your hard work. Mr. President, that concludes my superintendent report.
Could I just ask what time graduations are going to be? And could we look at morning when it could be cooler?
Rob, do we have times set yet?
3. Okay.
Thank you, Rob. For those who didn't hear that, that was 9, noon, 3, and 6.
May I have a motion on the approval of the K-8 and 9-12 academic calendars for the 2020 and 2021 school years?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move the board approve the 9 to 12 and K through 8 district academic calendars for the 2021 school year.
Is there a second?
I thought this
Second.
was a public hearing.
Director Klein, Jerome,
She's
second.
gonna do it in a minute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We will now hold a public hearing on the K-8, 9-12 academic calendars for the 2021 school year, as published in the Quad City Times on June 10th, 2020. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Any others? Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion on the calendar?
I do have a question. I see that the early out Wednesdays are still in there. When we talked about trying to catch up in education, was there some real consideration put in there? That would be at least 36 hours more. And I'm not saying use that 36 hours in our 1080, but it would be in addition to the 1080, or if not all 36, at least some of them, to put some more class time back in there.
I'll start.
Rob, because I know you usually do it.
I'll start with the answer on that. We had a long conversation with a number of teachers and administrators, and we still have to remember the value that we have in terms of our professional learning communities and teachers getting together and working with each other as opposed to isolation. It's entirely possible that if we have to go to a hybrid model, things will look a lot different. But our hope is, and our recommendation for the Return to Learn plan is that we do it on site. We believe that we can catch up from the last quarter of last year and accelerate next year with the current calendar that's out there. But we didn't want to completely dismantle the ideas of teachers working with teachers and having that time to collaborate. I know that's been very valuable, and that was a voice that we heard from our teaching staff. Rob, do you have any additional thoughts, or was that?
No, the only thing was the current contract was rolled over too, so we had so many Wednesdays that needed to be teacher time. There was also grading times. We did a lot with the grading practices at the end of the quarter, so we put some Wednesdays on that. So as we said, with the contract the way it is, we need to be able to have that time during those Wednesdays. Doesn't mean it couldn't change in the future if we end up having, some time away from the site, on site.
Okay.
Director Beck?
So I guess when we were discussing this, it was my understanding that we'd have 5 quarters for everyone. Is there a reason why only 9-12 has quarters in quotes, has the T0 and not K8?
And no, the model was always for the 9-12 to be
Okay.
5 quarters. And the extension of the K8 was to just make the first semester 20 weeks long to 16 weeks to front load those 4 weeks at the K8 level.
Keep in mind that K-8 isn't about accumulating credits,
Right.
Which is why we needed the terms, especially at the high school. So they had enough credits to move on, and that's why we had the terms there. From our perspective, the K-8 piece, the critical piece were the standards, and those standards were not term dependent. So again, what would have been the fourth quarter for elementary gets rolled into the next year with all the new standards.
And then I guess my other question is about sort of along the lines of what Director Klein-Jerome said. We still have a number of 2-hour early dismissals. Those are all because teachers need grading time and things like that?
Yeah, those rolled over in the contract. They were in
Okay.
the contract in the previous time, so that time was dedicated to teachers. We are making a little of adjustment with the time because we had heard last year in the grading committees that the elementary teachers needed more time than just that Friday. So we're front loading a little bit of those on Wednesdays and then taking some professional development time to that Friday. But yes, it's all in the contract. That's why it's there. Corey, did you have something you wanted to add about the calendar, the 2016 week?
So with the K-8 model, we're not redoing, we have unfinished learning, right, and unfinished teaching. And so it's really important from an equity lens that we are focusing on grade level standards, looking at those prerequisite skills. When you put a fifth term in, it's like you're reteaching all of the previous quarter standards. That's important at the high school level because we have credit bearing courses. So we want to ensure that those credit-bearing courses, that those students get that credit. They might have started, they might have had a class that they started third term that they need to finish that. They didn't have the opportunity to finish that. That's why we put the fifth term in for the high school.
Okay, so this is like if you're entering 3rd grade now, but you need some help getting to those 3rd grade standards because you didn't finish something in 2nd grade. That's that scaffold, right?
That's the scaffold, and that's why that first semester is a little longer.
Okay.
Because we're going to use that pre-assessment data to identify those prerequisite skills, making sure that we're really hitting grade level standards. Otherwise, you're just increasing, right, an opportunity and achievement gap by going backwards.
Okay.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of the MeteorCom contract.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move that the board approve the MediaCom contract in the amount of $119,400.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Klein-Jerome seconds. Discussion?
So, Mr. President, you may recall that we brought this item to the school board about a month and a half ago when it became apparent to us that as we were working through our voluntary learning program, we had equity issues in the sense that not all of our students had access to the internet. And we needed to resolve that as a school system. So we started investigating what other school districts were doing. The board may remember that we purchased some hotspots to try and fill in those gaps early on where we knew where they were. But we knew we also needed a more comprehensive and quite honestly, a more affordable option too. And we brought this forward to the board. The board asked us to wait a couple months just to make sure that this was something that we needed. We do believe heading into the next school year, we have a significant number of households that will be in need of connectivity to the internet. And this MediaCom contract will allow us to do that. This dollar amount, Mr. Poston, is available, is allowed to be used for CARES Act dollars. So CARES Act funding, this would not be coming out of our operating budget. This is a CARES Act legitimate expense. And we tried to model our contract and our work off of what other UEN districts have been doing, and they've been successful. So our learning experience over the last 2 months was this was an immediate need that we needed to fill, and we hope the board understands that from an equity perspective, this is basically a non-negotiable for us, but we think that it's the right thing to do for the right dollar amount. And Gary Sloat is here, and we also have access to a MediaCom representative who has called in the event that you have any technical questions or something of the sort. So I'll just ask Gary to come up. I'd be happy to take any questions and anything that's overtly technical. Hopefully Gary can handle that, or if it's anything that's related to MediaCom, we can certainly introduce that individual, move that conversation forward. Thank you.
Director Gosa.
So I guess one of my questions would be, so we get these, and I think this is a great thing to do. What if a family has to move? Obviously, we have low-income families, and they probably move a few times a year. So are they able to take this equipment with them, and it's able to be reinstalled in their new location, or how does that work?
To the best of my knowledge, that would be the process. They would bring the MediaCom device in, we would reprogram it for their new address and send it back out with them so they could go straight to where they need to go to.
Is that an additional cost, or is that kind of factored in?
No, one of the advantages with the MediaCom package is that all of the houses in our area primarily are serviced by MediaCom activity or installations. So there's no construction needed to add these houses to our to the MediaCom network, and we just plug in the modem, and it connects them to our network and the internet at large.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck.
I know you mentioned there's a small percentage of people who are not connected. So do we have a need in the rural areas where MediaCom is not at the time? And do we have plans to help those families?
Yeah, we're going to need to do a little bit more research to find those people, but we have adequate numbers of hotspots that are available to us now, as long as they have cellular connection. There are also dish networks that have satellite capabilities and stuff, so we should be able to reach all of our population.
And then a follow-up to that then is, you kind of explain how you'll decide who gets this service, but can you give a little bit more detail? Is this something that we're going to announce to the district, and then people who think they may qualify can apply? Or are we going to target families who are submitting, say, their free and reduced lunch waiver? Or how are we going to find the families that need this?
We were able to perform what's known as a reverse lookup of addresses, so we were able to discover where MediaCom had connections already and whether those connections were live with MediaCom aspects. So we've eliminated about 5,200 families that are on MediaCom already. We'll be able to pursue that. I think we'll have to have some kind of an outreach campaign, probably through social media, and then some targeted calling for people who we know fit the target market, and make sure that they're still in need before we enlist the service. Make sure they're interested.
Okay, thank you.
Other question? Other questions? Director Gosi.
So I guess along those lines, since you were able to do the reverse lookup, I'm sure you've done the process of elimination on who has MetroNet, who has CenturyLink and stuff like that, or that hasn't been factored in.
Right now, there are 9,015 unique addresses in the Davenport Schools family pool. We get that from our campus information that they share with us. Of that, we know 5,200 of those families are already connected to MediaCom. We know that there are 3,868 homes that could be connected to MediaCom, but we don't know if they are connected to MetroNet or other service providers. And that's a question we'll need to ask.
Okay. So I guess where do you get the number for this if we don't know those numbers yet? How are we going to commit to a contract if we don't know if we need more or less, I guess?
Right.
Does that make
So
sense?
what MediaCom wanted to do for us is they established a good number of about 1,000 homes. And that's based on demographics that we were able to share and that sort of thing. The information then is that we're only going to be paying for those accounts that we actually get set up and only when they get set up. So we'll see this bill rise to as much as roughly $10,000 a month to supply a full 1,000. If it goes over that, it expands to accommodate that. If it doesn't make it to that, it's okay. They needed a number to put on the contract, and this was a nice round number for representing.
So we have wiggle room to go more.
Absolutely wiggle.
Okay. We're not married to that number though. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Director Hayes.
So with this 1,000 and the 200 hotspots we have, is that basically saying we're servicing 1,200 students if needed? Or how are the hotspots being used?
Well, the hotspots right now are paired to a Chromebook so that the two are automatically set up to work with each other, and that makes them very functional for our users. We have the ability to set the hotspots up so they can service more Chromebooks or other products in the family home to get that internet accomplished. But usually, if you don't have internet, you don't have devices, so it was an obvious pairing for us to get that done. The addition of the MediaCom connections in the home allow any product in that home to get on the internet to do the things that they need to do for school and other functions. Those kids, every kid in our school district, of course, has a Chromebook, and so that's a given that they'll have that device to be able to connect with Google Classroom and those other things.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dan?
I just thought of this when you were talking about the Chromebooks. Is there a way to put Wi-Fi hotspots on all of the Chromebooks so they're set up no matter where they're at? Say someone's babysitting them and they're not particular at that house.
Yeah.
Still have that.
Yeah.
They're able to do that.
That's functionally the same thing we did with the Wi-Fi, the hotspots. Basically, you can put a cell card into a Chromebook or buy a Chromebook that's already equipped with a cell signal. The challenge with that is it's about 3 times the cost of the solution we're able to bring by. And with the cable solution that we're bringing to the home, other people can get on that. So it's a much more versatile solution in the home.
Okay. I'm just kind of thinking, like, say grandma and grandpa pick them up from school, or aunt and uncle, and they're at their house till late at night when mom and dad get off work or whatever the case may be. I was just trying to run different scenarios, which I imagine once we start something, we'd be able to kind of pinpoint those unique circumstances. And
it's one of those situations where we'll have to discover more about the need to understand how to fill that. We do have hotspots available right now. If that were the case, that grandma and grandpa are the primary caretakers, but maybe we deliver the MediaCom to that home instead of the residents. There's all kinds of solutions that I think we can come up with.
okay. Thank you. I think that's it now.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Are we going to order new Chromebooks, a certain amount that probably are not going to return this fall? So we've got replacements, backups, and we're prepared for that.
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty good shape. We do an annual refresh of our Chromebooks to the tune of 3,500 Chromebooks a year, and that's for setting up various grade levels. So the ideal situation is we hand off a Chromebook to the freshmen in high school, that's their Chromebook for the entire duration of their high school career. We got 2 years in intermediate school now, so that's a smaller duration. We're going to have to figure out how we can shuffle those back into the deck. And we got a larger population at our elementaries that we've got to shuffle Chromebooks around in a little bit as well. But all three of those grade levels have been targeted for new Chromebooks to replace the ones that are going out of warranty. So we've got that covered. We have collected up our 12th grade returns to us. So we have that population to pull on for those Chromebooks that don't come back. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to see a lot of those come back because kids really want to come back to school with those. So.
Other questions? Director Beck.
Should we find ourselves with a lot of broken and non-returned Chromebooks, is that something we could use CARES Act money to replace since it would be above what we would normally be purchasing?
It's definitely something we could look into.
Okay.
Just in case.
We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Mayfield? Director Mayfield? Director Mayfield? I'll record that as a no vote. And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of the Power School contract.
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the Power School contract in the amount of $59,510.04.
May I have a second?
Second.
Director Hayes has seconded. Discussion on the item.
What fund pays for this? Is it general fund or is there something else?
We're able to use PEPAL for this.
Thank you.
Further questions? We'll go to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. May I have a motion on the approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the Davenport Education Association?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move the board approve the negotiated collective bargaining agreement with the Davenport Education Association effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023.
May I have a second?
Second.
Who is that? Discussion? Director Gosa?
I do have one question about that was presented during open forum. I don't remember us ever talking about that, but if we have issues recruiting teachers and stuff, isn't that kind of a roadblock if they have to be part-time for 3 years before they can bid into a full-time spot?
So we have a new HR director that's coming in that we're going to take a look at all of these pieces to see. So as you know, there are reopeners in this. And if we find that this is a roadblock in any way, shape, or form, we can revisit this topic.
Okay, so if we vote on this now, it's set in stone like this, at least for next year, because it is an opener, but and which side has to, it would be the district side that comes to open it back up?
So if it was our wish to open it up, yes, we would have to put that forward. And if it was their wish to do so, they could do it. There's also been, in between bargaining agreements, there's always a possibility for an MOU that's very specific to an issue that perhaps wouldn't reopen the entire collective bargaining agreement, But my argument would be let's cross that bridge when we see how our staffing is going.
I guess my question is, are there people right now that would affect if we needed more full-time positions, they wouldn't be able to because of this?
Rob,
Whoever can answer that, that'd be great.
Rob, I know you've been doing a lot of the staffing.
It's always been my understanding that if someone was increasing their amount of work time, that they've been allowed to do that, not held to staying within a part-time job. So if I was going from 0.5 to a 0.75, they were allowed to 0.75 to a full-time job. That stipulation is just around, I couldn't leave a 0.5 job for another 0.5 job, or a full-time job for a full-time job.
Okay.
If I was increasing, you were allowed to. That's been our past practice.
Okay, so if you're going from a part-time job to full-time, you're good.
Some percentage of increase
Okay.
is available to you.
But Rob, isn't that within the same building so that you maintain your evaluation and probationary time?
Actually, I believe that a half-time teacher has been allowed to take a full-time job in another building
Okay.
because they were again filling a role for us. Now we have a full-time teacher.
Perfect. I can't believe that never came up in any of our discussions during any of that. That answers my question. Thank you.
Other questions? We'll go to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the maintenance employees.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board approve the negotiated collective bargaining agreement with the maintenance employees effective July 1st, 20 through June 30th, 23.
there a second?
Second.
Klein Jerome seconds. Any discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of membership in the Iowa Association of School Boards.
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I recommend that the board approve the annual membership dues, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, to the Iowa Association of School Boards in the amount of $12,200.
may I have a second?
Second.
Director Postian. Discussion?
It's a good choice.
We'll go to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of membership in the Urban Education Network.
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve the annual membership dues, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, to the Urban Education Network of Iowa in the amount of $10,000.
may I have a second?
Second.
Director Gosa seconds. Discussion? Move to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the Return to Learn plan?
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve the Return to Learn plan.
may I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Postian. Discussion?
Ready for presentation? We have a PowerPoint.
The horse is in the barn right now.
We're all here and ready to go. A lot of people have put a great deal of work into this to include the school board, and
Yes. We'll give it to you.
there, Rose, and there. Who's driving the PowerPoint?
You got it up there.
What am I? Oh, there it is. Thank you.
So if you just, do you like the branding of the Return to Learn? So as we heard from our tag folks, when people see this, we want them to know what this is about, that this is important information. We're hoping that our local media outlets will allow us to do some public service announcements perhaps, and this logo would be out there so that we can reach people in multiple formats, and certainly with social media and all the other formats that we've talked about. But this is an important part of how we're going to come back to school on August 24th. I'm going to state that one more time. August 24th is our return to school day. We are planning for 3 possibilities. However, it is our hope and it's our recommendation, with the assurances that we'll submit to the state, that our preference is to go on-site learning. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I thought it would be important just to sort of circle back on the timeline, because as you know, it's been very tight and there's been a great deal of work to do in a very short order of time. So it was only on May 8th that the support document that was shared with you, that was given to the districts across the entire state of Iowa. So it wasn't all that long ago where we received the requirements that we had to work through in order to submit our plan as to what instruction would look like when we decided to return to school. So we began that work shortly thereafter on May 12th with the district leadership team, DSAT. As you know, that leadership team has been in place for quite some time, and it's a very integrated group that represents a broader leadership spectrum across the district. We've worked on a whole host of issues. We spent a good part of our year working on social, emotional, behavioral health. But however, we were quickly able to transition into the leadership work that was required for Return to Learn. By May 19th, we had determined who our co-facilitators were for each of the critical areas, and we'll see the graphic for what that looks like, and then obviously the workflow that needed to take place, knowing that there was a great deal of integration amongst the critical areas that was necessary. And then from May 22nd through June 12th, as the board will attest to, the critical work was taking place with the subcommittees, which were to identify the critical actions that needed to be addressed so that we can have a plan that was proactive as opposed to reactive to whatever the situation would be. So again, our goal was to put together 3 scenarios, an on-site scenario, a continuous learning scenario for our students if health conditions required us to go full online, knowing that that would be a required platform this time around. The idea of voluntary was no longer an option for us. Or a hybrid model, again, which would be determined by health conditions at the time. So on June 18th, subcommittee facilitators and their members work with DSAT, and we set up all the due dates to make sure that all those action steps that you've seen and are about to see for the first time are laid out, and also laying out who was responsible for those. Here we are this evening. You have an opportunity as a school board to review the action plan. Please keep in mind that this action plan is a living, breathing, working document. Tonight is not the end game to this. Tonight is just the pathway that we are going to be following over the next few weeks leading into August 24th. But I will also say that circumstances could change on September 24th that would require us to move in a different direction. And we just have to be nimble enough to be able to manage that type of transition. But that planning is taking place now. We don't want to be in a situation where if something happens on September 24th, we start working on it on September 23rd. That's not our intention. Unfortunately, this past March, when everything started to close, we had to ramp up rather quickly with the work that needed to be done and didn't have the benefit of the planning that we have right now. So as I mentioned, June 22nd through August 1st, each team will be working on their action steps to make sure that all of those components are adhered to, and we have assurances that those are being done. Once again, July 1st, we'll be going into the CASA system. You're familiar with that system. I brought it up at our last board meeting with regard to our citations. That's how we communicate with the state, and that's how they communicate with us. We will list our assurances that the board has approved a plan. Most importantly, we will assure the state that we have plans for these eventualities, and you'll see that tonight. And then once again, August 24th, being the very first day of school, that's going to be a very prominent messaging campaign on our behalf from TAG and everyone else as we move forward. We want everyone in our community to know that that's going to take place. Thank you, Corey. So in the supporting document that we provided to the board a few weeks back, there were 7 critical areas that the state required individual school districts to address in their return to learn plan. It was leadership, infrastructure, health and safety, Iowa academics, social emotional behavioral health, equity, and data, which one of the things we learned very early, and we'll talk about as to why we've structured our presentation this way, is data in particular is infused in all of the 6 other critical areas, but we also learned very early on that there's overlap in a number of these areas with regard to action steps that need to take place, and we had to figure out a very effective and efficient way to manage that. And that's why we've organized our return to learn plan a little bit in a different format than perhaps that you've seen previously. So the very first committee was the leadership committee, and I was able to co-facilitate that with Diane Campbell, and obviously there were a number of members. You can see the membership of that particular committee. This committee's main job was to develop the plan, but most importantly, develop the process that would allow the plan to be developed. We knew what we had to do, but we didn't have a process for how we were going to go about working through this work. So not only did we have to develop a process, but we had to establish a team as to who was going to develop this process and who was going to do this work, and then make sure that as the work was being done, that it was going to be implemented, that we were adhering to timelines, and that we could monitor our progress and evaluate how we were moving, and if through a continuous improvement model, if we needed to shift gears and move in different directions. So this team was designed to, again, develop the plan, develop the process, monitor its implementation, and really stay on top of sort of the umbrella team to keep revisiting all the action steps, keep the team together, keep all the subgroups together, so that, again, this is not the end game. We are going to continue to have conversations not only now, but to the start of the school year. And again, it's all going to be dependent on COVID-19 and the health recommendations that we're getting from the health department. And then action area C, very important to us, is communication. Communication both internally to our teachers, so they have a very clear understanding of what we are attempting to do and what their role is in all aspects of our return to learn plan, knowing that it is an extraordinarily complex plan. It's not only a complex plan, but it's one that requires an attention to detail and an understanding of, like I said, what your role is in the plan. So that's the leadership team. And as a result of that, we have other subcommittees that work. So my thanks to Mr. Postian for being part of that leadership team. We reviewed with him the elements of this presentation tonight to say, is this something that would mesh with, what the board would hope would be their expectations. So if there's anything here you don't like, you can blame Mr. Postian for, no, I'm just teasing Kent, I'm teasing on that one. But thank you very much, Kent, for being a part of that, and you asked some very good questions along the way. Our next group is the Infrastructure Subcommittee, and that's Marianne Corbin and Jen Van Fleet. And Marianne is here tonight just to give us an overview of the work of this particular group. Marianne, thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And Jen Van Fleet is joining us remotely, so she is also in on this conversation. As was said, I am a co-facilitator with Jen Van Fleet. We also had Mr. Potts on our team and Mr. Rob Scott on our team. There was a variety of teachers that represented all 3 levels and administrators from all 3 levels as well. 3 areas that we had to consider in infrastructure. The first was determining current needs and capacity. We did that early on with the school closure with one survey. So we were looking at the results of the first survey we had. And then it was determined that we do need an additional survey, but we wanted to be very thoughtful about that and make sure the survey that went out was comprehensive and included any questions or input needed for any of the subcommittees. So a small team met last week that had representation from other subcommittees, and we put together a survey for our families That is currently being translated, so that can go out real soon here. And then we also put together a staff survey. That one is ready to go out to our staff. When our students return, we will do an additional survey for our students. And again, that information is going to be critical to get that input from those people so that we can make some additional decisions and add a little more detail to our plans. The second thing is we looked at the needs as far as the district calendar. As you saw the calendars tonight, there was discussion around what the calendar would look like at high school, what it would look like at intermediate and at elementary. We also talked about the 3 models that Dr. Kabilski referenced, and that is that we want to be on site as much as we can, but we know that we need to be prepared for a hybrid model and for a required continuous learning model. So we continue to work on the protocols and the communication pieces for that and putting more detail to the hybrid model. And input from our community through that survey will help us do that. That committee met last week to start the research on that piece, and we'll meet again this week with some additional pieces of information. And then the third area was professional development. And again, it's very important for us to listen to members of the other subgroups and what professional development, so we can create a comprehensive professional development calendar that includes all the needs of the different subgroups. 2 areas that came out really high there was the need for professional development to start the year when it comes to health and safety and technology, because we know both those areas will be things that might need to be put in place right away. That we have a total of 36 actions. I won't go through all of those, but if you have questions, or if Mr. Potts, Jen Van Fleet, or Rob have anything to add that I did not include?
And again, we'll go through all of these, and we can certainly circle back because there's an additional document that we think provides some coherence for all of this that probably would better serve a Q&A format. Thank you, Miriam.
We represent the Health and Safety Committee. We also decided to do a subgroup committee. The leaders of our subgroup are Gina Ekstrom. She's taking care of our health and safety, our health portion. Bruce McKee, our security and emergency operations. Sanitation, maintenance, and food services, Dan Burlingame. We also wanted to make sure we have representation from every level. So we had pre-K, their elementary, Steve Mielenhausen had a group. Eric Johnson, middle school AP, and Brian Alinger from the high school. Jamie Kroger represented us from HR, and we also had out of school time, our after school programming, Shani Ford, and our board representative was Director Klein Jerome, which is very fortunate because she's taught at every one of the levels and had all the perspectives plus a board perspective. Our organizer was Danielle Heller, and our oversight decision making was Bill Schnaden. The leaders of each group met. They also went out and created groups to discuss all the current standards to make sure we're seeking input from all of our stakeholders. Jamie Kroger and myself met with all the union, with all the bargaining groups, and we wanted to begin to have conversations and get out ahead of the fears and begin to mitigate. Today we met with, example, one of the healthcare professionals from Genesis to begin to gather facts and put them together. The leaders of the subgroup met and they prioritized our actions. So right now we have a list of prioritized actions so we can begin to make a run at certain equipment. Example, plastic that can go in front of our stations, things of that nature where money might be handled, sneeze guards. Director Klein Jerome made a suggestion that our students begin to make plastic face shield masks, and so we have a meeting scheduled this Thursday to talk with our 3D printing to begin to move in that direction. One of the biggest things that we need to do is ensure that return to learn professional development is solid for our teachers. So the AEA and the state have put together a really comprehensive professional development that is constantly changing with the new guidance. Our own health staff are putting together protocols if you are sick, if you are exposed to someone who's sick, if a student is sick, things of that nature, if-then statements and flow charts that are easy to see. I'm happy to say that our team is committed over the summer to continue to work and help oversight of this plan and make sure nothing drops. Throughout our plan, we noticed that our preschool is an animal in itself. And when I say that, they have DHS requirements that are different than than regular K through 12 education. So we've established a subgroup that's going to start to meet and look at those separate issues on the same portion with our out of school time offices. So that's where we are to date with our health and safety subcommittee.
Thank you, TJ.
All right. We had an Iowa Academic Standards Subcommittee that I co-facilitated with Bonnie Acey. We had an awesome team of teachers, administration. We had our board member, Allison Beck, and AEA support. So we were able to meet and get our actions really accomplished in 4 meetings. And the focus of Iowa Academic Standards is first to assess initial student learning needs. And I referred to that earlier. You have to think about what is the unfinished teaching that happened that students didn't get, what's the unfinished learning, and wrapping our head around what's that pre-assessment then need to look at as far as ensuring when the students come back that we know that the teacher in the classroom knows what they need to do to give grade level content while also making up some of those prerequisite skills. The second area of focus was matching curriculum to student needs. What are those high leverage curriculum materials that we need to ensure that we have access to if we're online, a hybrid model? And then the last chunk was all about accelerating student learning using effective instruction matched to student needs. We spent a lot of time reading in our group what the best practices are from the Department of Ed site. And sometimes it can even be a little counterintuitive to what you think when you're out of school for so long. What we learned is that we really have to focus for next year on grade level standards with the idea that there are prerequisite skills that might have some unfinished learning. How do teachers really leverage good instruction scaffolds in order to be able to do that in one school year? So we identified some awesome resources. We're going to match professional development needs for our students, and we came up with 20 specific actions in the areas of Iowa academic standards. Next.
Thank you, Corey.
Hi, I'm Jake Klipsch. I am in charge of, or co-facilitated with Marty Schultz, the Social, Emotional, Behavioral Health Subcommittee. We had Director Hayes in our group, and we also had a really, really great group of people from pre-K, elementary, intermediate, high school, special education. We had John Border here for the kind of our community liaison. Lindsay Mack was the Vera French school-based therapist, so she had great insight in this area, and Sarah Harris, who's an AAA staff that does a lot of training and expertise in this area as well. In our area, we focused, there are 3 general areas, because it's not just about the students and their social emotional health, but it's about the staff. And when they're coming back, how are we going to address that, as well as our families as a whole? And within each of those 3 areas, it was further broken out into how are we going to identify the needs in each of these areas, and then how are we going to address them? So we also met, I think it was 4 Fridays in a row, and we had 2 hours at each session, and we still didn't have enough time. So then we set up an additional meeting throughout the week to continue to kind of flesh out these ideas. And in addition to that, the big piece was starting a draft for this needs assessment survey, because we can talk all about the things that we assume our families need or that we assume our staff needs or what they're feeling about, but without really getting their voice involved, we're just making guesses. So we had a really great start on that survey, and as Marianne talked about, we collaborated then with the SCBH section with the infrastructure and health and safety. We all sat down together and said, let's put this together in one coherent survey for our families and for our staff, and that will be coming out very shortly. I'm really happy, and I'm actually really interested in seeing the results of that. So we came in with 20 actions, and the same thing with the other groups. They are still waiting and ready to do more. So we know, for example, that we need to find ways to address one of our actions being the communication plan for opportunities for staff to address social emotional wellness in their personally. And so that's an action, but how are we going to do that? So we have a team that's already going to be signing up to say, okay, what's the actual plan for that action? So that's kind of our next step. So it's been a great opportunity to work with some great people in our schools.
Jake, could you answer one question? On your part, it says explore the use of the strengths and difficulties questionnaire as a universal screener. What is that exactly?
Yeah, those are conversations I'm happening even as of today. So the strengths and difficulties questionnaire is it's about, I think it's 20 questions, and it's a screener that helps to identify internalizing factors for to help us to identify students that we might need to give some extra support to. In the past, we only gave this to fourth grade students at a few select buildings, and we wanted to expand on that. So we have different screeners, one of which is called the Social and Academic Emotional Behavioral Rating Scale, which is SABRS. We love acronyms, as you know. That's a screener that's great for identifying students that have externalized behaviors, things that you see in class. They're all over the place. But there's a lot of students who are really struggling with some anxiety and internalized stress that sit there quietly and they're very obedient, and we think, well, they're just doing great. There's no problems with that student, and they get overlooked. The SDQ, the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire, is a screener that helps to hit a little bit more on and identify those students. So students take that screener, the staff becomes aware of who are the students we need to kind of pull in and make some plans for, and then we dig in and create those plans based on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you, Jake.
Absolutely.
So Don Anderson Rasher and I co-chaired the Equity Committee, our Equity Subcommittee. Dan Gosa and Allison Beck participated in our meetings, which we very much appreciated. We had 23 teachers that ranged from preschool through high school, and we had special education, ESL teachers, tag teachers, and then gen ed teachers who wanted to participate because they are very passionate about this issue. Actually, I will say every teacher, wouldn't you say, were very, very passionate about this issue and the need for us to become much more equitable in what we do. And then we had some administrators on the committee as well.
I'm going to put this to you, though. All right. So we had 5 areas. We just had to deal with equity for all students, students with IEPs, students who are English learners, students at risk, and at risk was broadly defined as it came from the state, and then students who are gifted and talented. So it was a kind of a small task to make sure that everybody was equitable treated and that. And we kind of some overarching themes as we were discussing these in our group, because we did divide up to, the special ed people worked with the students with IEPs, the EL teachers worked with English learners, we had the tag teachers work with gifted and talented, and then we have some teachers who just work for the generally at-risk students. But there was kind of like 2 overarching themes that came out of it, was communication and engagement, that we wanted to make sure that is addressed. And a lot of these things that we talked about are things that are going to cut across all the others. And that, things that, communication is in every one of these, and engagement is in all of these. But some of the things that our teachers were really adamant about is that they wanted to make sure that there was one platform that went out to our families. We've heard from some families, especially at the intermediate level, they had 6 teachers who had a different platform. They had to download this app to do that. And they're saying we need one across the district to communicate with our families. The other is that translated copies are released at the same time as English copies. So those were 2 of the things, at least in communication. When you were looking at engagement, they were really looking at curricular materials and, of course, access to technology and that. But one of the things that came across with the curricular materials, and I think we heard that, I believe it was Ann's presentation from TAG, was talking about the families said, what we need help in the evenings, that second shift. That, my children are watching their younger children. They don't have time during the day to be able to do schoolwork, so they need to have this second shift. And so that's one of the things that our group said, we need to have second shift instructional support by certified teachers. And we don't have we didn't come up with a recommendation on how to do that, but thinking that, maybe there will be some teachers who are not going to come back because of concerns of health. And that could they be our second shift teachers, the ones that are there, that are available. If families have questions, if students have questions, there's somebody there to address their needs. Do the next one.
All right, so we had all of those subcommittees that came up with those individual actions, considerations, and as you can see, they were quite detailed to ensure that they had a plan for hybrid, on-site, and also continuous learning. As you take those critical areas and you're bringing that back together, you have to have a cohesive plan. And taking all of those actions into a cohesive plan, there are themes that really came up. For example, the needs assessment survey was in a variety of all of the critical areas. It came up in Iowa academic standards and equity, definitely in infrastructure. Professional development was another area. Health and safety has professional development needs. Iowa academic standards, we only have so much professional development time with our teachers, so we have to be very systematic in how we approach that. School calendar, and you can read the list going on all the way to data. And then there were some that just were these unique needs that just kind of were within a certain area. And so what you have attached to board docs is what those, let me see if I can do that. There we go. What you have attached to board docs is the entire return to learn plan that takes in all of those actions that of the critical areas and puts it really into a cohesive plan with some due dates. So we know that the first one was the survey data, and that is due July 19th, but within those are actions, not just giving out the survey, but how we're going to use that. And it's also ongoing needs. So with that, Dr. Kubilski, I think we could open it up for questions.
Thank you, Corey. I'll just add, again, I think it's important to emphasize that we did not approach this in a fragmented, topic by topic manner. We wanted to make sure that we were systematic. So it was very important that if we were going to put out surveys, it was going to be one survey and not 6 different surveys that were associated with each group, and be very responsible knowing that, folks are only going to answer a few survey questions. We can't put out a 50-question survey, so we had to be very strategic on that. So really looking at the interrelatedness of all of the essential topics that were provided by the state, we felt it was intuitive and to look at how we were going to attack these from a systems perspective as opposed to in isolation. So that's why you see this document is organized the way it is. So, for example, let's see, what are you showing right now, Corey? Number 3, which is our so return for continuous learning. What are the pieces that we need to hit? Well, calendar you saw a little bit this evening. What are schedules going to look like? But again, the focus on that whole return to learn piece. And if you look at the structure of the document itself, you'll see that there's crossover from infrastructure, there's crossover from academic standards. And so that's what we tried to capture, so that it didn't look as though all these 142 action items were somehow just associated with one particular topic, and we wanted to take advantage of an efficient way to do this. And hopefully you'll appreciate the fact that it's organized in this fashion. We also included the state's guidelines, so when you look at any one of these topics and you want to look up, B1 for infrastructure, you can certainly look that up. You'll see what it states here, but you can look up any one of these in that state document. But at the end of the day, there are 142 different action items that need to take place. Not only do we have individuals who are coordinating particular efforts with regard to the topics that you see here and the themes that we have identified, like I said, we have those due dates, and we know who's responsible, and we know when this work will get done. So my gratitude and thanks goes to everyone who's been a part of this. We've taken a school system and recreated it basically over the course of the last 6 weeks. I will state just as sort of an offshoot piece, the most challenging for us right now, and I'll be perfectly honest with everyone, is the hybrid model, because we're not quite sure what health circumstances will look like. And there are so many variables and hypotheticals when it comes to the hybrid model that that group has quite a bit of heavy lifting to do. You can imagine what it's like to put together a high school master schedule, but then all of a sudden, what happens if in that schedule students come every other day? That's a brand new master schedule that has to be built. So that one was challenging. We certainly learned a lot from our continuous learning experience over the course of the end of our school year. But again, a great deal of work to be done there. And then even for the on-site, when you think about the health and safety aspects of on-site and staying 6 feet apart, how many students can we physically put in a classroom? Can we have 32 kids in a social studies class anymore? Those are the things that we have to start taking a look at and making sure that we have answers for all of those. So hopefully the organization of the work that needs to be done is intuitive. Hopefully it's thoughtfully organized. We believe it's task manageable in terms of the action items that need to take place, even though there are 142 of those. But at the end of the day, our goal is to start school on August 24th, having a plan for any eventuality that's moving forward. And I would, again, offer my congratulations and thanks to the team for rolling up their sleeves and getting this very complex and important work done in such short order. It's a testament to the quality of the individuals who work for this system, and I couldn't be more proud of the work that was done, and I couldn't be more proud of the people that were involved in this process. So you have my thanks, and also my thanks to the board, because I think it was important for you to understand in more depth than just getting a presentation of what we're going to do. Hopefully you have an appreciation for the complexity of the work and the fact that you have dedicated teams that are working very diligently on this process. So be happy to open it up for questions, whether they're general or specific. Mr. President, I'll just turn things over to you.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Going to, in the high school, like a 38-day, a 36-day term, is somebody working separately from all of this to, I'm used to a 45 days and this is what I cover in 45 days. Now you've cut 10 days out. What do I drop or not teach, or how do is somebody working on that?
So I think that's 5, which is MTSS best practices. But one of the actions that came out of the Iowa Academic Standards is to look at the scope and sequence guide. So just as you said, a teacher's used to their scope and sequence guide and we're going to be looking at that to compact standards for the essential learners, for the essential standards, instead of trying to get through all of the auxiliary standards, ensuring that we have really high leverage instruction that's happening, but also high leverage products, so that teachers have the materials, they have access to the materials that'll help them guide to make that best decision in the classroom.
Director Beck.
First of all, yeah, great work. This is a lot, I know. And I really appreciated allowing us to be a part of it. It kind of was really helpful to see, to be in the room where it happens. Sorry, I couldn't think of anything else. Quick question. I noticed in a couple different places, the same thing is listed. So like the Google Meets Pro, I know that came up a couple times, and that there's certain things that technology needs that people need for effective online learning. So can you explain how to sort of read this chart then, if the same thing is listed more than once?
Yeah. So some actions, as we were looking at themes, some of them have professional development needs. So let's say we go to one platform that is Google Meets. That's a technology need. We need to determine, yes, it's Google Meet, or yes, it's Google Voice, for example. Mm-hmm. But then we also have to ensure that teachers know how to use those things. So you will see some of the specific actions show up in it could show up in two different places. But we also have that group that originally met that put that action on there, and they're working to determine, well, what's the cost of that? What would that entail? But that's something that has to be considered when you're planning professional development.
Right. Okay.
So if you look at our return to learn document, if you go to item 7, you'll see where the crossover is with regard to equity and infrastructure, give you example of where that conversation has a different context to it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Director Beck?
One other question, and probably nobody has the answer to this, but do we know when the state might make a decision as to how our classrooms should look from a health and safety standpoint? Whether we're going to be allowed to go back to school or be required online or what?
Complex answer to that. Here's my intuition. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, and nobody does, but I do believe that it will not be a comprehensive state decision. I think as this virus is unfolding, what we're starting to see is targeted responses. And I think what would probably happen is if there was an area of the state where all of a sudden things were getting dicey with COVID-19, they may be required to do something different, where maybe on the eastern side of the state, we're still okay. So I would be shocked if there was a universal proclamation that says the whole state, unless everything just went to heck in a handbasket and we had to do that. My suspicion would be it would be a regional type of a decision that would rely on localized data and local health department recommendations.
Okay, and I guess my follow-up to that would be, I assume we're in communication with the city, for example, or the local public health departments, so that, as Karen joked, we're not making the decision on August 23rd whether we're going to be online or in person, but at least giving us some lag time.
We meet weekly with the health department officials.
Okay.
The governor did say August 1st was the date that she was going to say if we were the whole state was required online learning. I will probably try for the same kind of a deadline for families. That will take some adjustments if it was all online.
Right. Okay.
Questions? We'll go to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postred?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We're on to discussion items. There's a letter from our Equity Committee that Director Hayes will be presenting. Director Hayes?
Thank you. This letter was given to me by Jamie Walker Salas, who is the Davenport Education Association Multicultural Committee Chairperson, and I've given each of you a copy of this letter so you'll have it. But it was dated June 16th of 2020, and it basically says, in collaboration with Jabari Woods, Associate Director of HR and Equity Coordinator, the Davenport Education Association Multicultural Committee Chair, Jamie Walker Salas, are releasing the following statement on behalf of the Davenport Education Association Multicultural Committee with full support from the DA President, John Keeley. In wake of the tragic incidents which have occurred in Davenport, Minnesota, and throughout the nation, it is vital now more than ever we push for honest racial reform policies for students, parents, staff, law enforcement, and city officials. These policies must clearly promote equity in our schools and fair treatment of all students and staff members of color. We must form collaborative teams, including all stakeholders, to ensure disproportionality and systemic institutional racism is identified and removed in a nonviolent, solution-focused manner. The Davenport Community School District certified student enrollment for the 2017-18 school year reflects 44.31% of students identifying as persons of color. This statistic alone demonstrates why we have a vested interest in promoting equity and fair treatment within our school district. All students should be valued and treated equally. Jamie Walker Salas, Davenport Education Association Multicultural Chairperson, Jabari Woods, Associate Director of HR and Equity Coordinator. The group, I'm not sure how many people are in this group, but basically they wanted me to read this letter and see if the school board had any feelings about it. I guess they're going to pass it out. Did they talk to you, Dr. Kay, about it? That they were going to distribute it to let them know that this is something that the district takes seriously. And just wanted your comments. Director Beck?
No, you bet.
Director Beck?
I just wanted to say I appreciate that. I didn't quite hear where you said it was going to be distributed.
Going to be or has been already, but they were wanting everyone in the district to have a copy of it.
Okay, yeah, no, this
So
is,
it's my understanding that it was distributed, so the Multicultural Committee asked me for permission to do so. I did so wholeheartedly. I agree with all the tenets and conversation that was laid out in this document. So as a superintendent, I supported that decision to send that out. I believe it was done so, but again, our opportunity as a school district is to lead on this topic of racism, and we intend to do so.
okay. I just wanted to say I appreciate it. I had been looking for a statement from the district, and this sums up what I think is an appropriate statement, so I appreciate it. And thank you very much for reading it at our meeting.
I echo that. Thank you, Director Hayes, for reading that. I myself am 100% in support of this, and I would say I would extend myself out to the Multicultural Committee if they want to have a board member on there to be their voice at the board table. I'm your guy. I hope they're listening. If they're not, I'm sure they're going to watch it later on, but thank you again.
Any other comments? Thank you, Director Hayes. Board requests. One from Director Hayes. I've had a few parents ask about a few more from Director Hayes.
Is there a deadline for those?
Okay. I've had a few parents ask about refunds regarding the trips that were canceled due to the COVID. Will they be receiving refunds or not? If so, when? This is the request of several parents. This is just a request for information. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Hayes, I would like to know the outcome of the audit pertaining to the sale of Lincoln and the district. There was community uproar regarding the situation, and it just went away with no follow-up. This is a request for information. I'm assuming you're talking about a request from the state auditor who, yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll give it to Vic. What the heck? From Director Gosa, I would like to have a discussion on the SRO program. I would like this to include some SROs, police chief, as well as members of the NAACP, education committee, teachers, and parents. In the current climate, I feel that this discussion is crucial to see what the position and negative effects of this program.
Positive.
What?
What the positive and negative effects are.
Okay, positive and negative. If this is a program that we should continue with improvements or stop using the program. This is an agenda item. Is there a second?
Actually, I just want to say, that
so
was one of my board
I'm
requests
shelving
too,
yours.
so mine can be shelved.
So there a
I'll second.
Beck? Director Hayes, I would like the policy committee to take a look at formulating a nepotism policy. We have a lot of family members employed within the district, and I feel the hiring of non-family will assist in surging forward with the new ideas and new image for the district. This is an agenda item. Is there a second?
Second.
From Director Gosa, request for information. How much money was spent on interpreting using outsources for communications? This information is important to see if we can hire someone in-house. Is there a second?
Second.
That's an information seconded by Director Hayes. Okay. Administrative reports.
Oh, wait, I have a couple more board requests. That's what, it said I had 4, but Mary didn't have a chance to type them up. So there was the one. Can I make my other ones?
Okay, why didn't you bring them?
I did, but I didn't know Mary, I sent them a long time ago because I thought we were going to be on Zoom. And then Mary told me tonight she didn't have a chance to type them, so to just read them from my email. And I didn't want to write them out while we were in our meeting because then I'd miss the meeting.
Okay. Say them, get a second, and then
I'll
send
write them out.
printed copies.
Okay.
No
perfect.
printed copies.
Okay. The first one is I would like to make a board request that we do a board group reading of at least one book on systemic inequities. And the reason being, I think it's important if we are to make a systemic change in disproportionality, it starts at the top.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to number that's number 1.
Okay. Number 2, I'd like to put in a board request that we be given baseline data. This is an information request, but an agenda later on how many of our third graders were reading at grade level at the end of the 18-19 school year, and then be given our current plans or programs in place for working to get our current third graders reading by the end of each year for the next 3 years. I'd like to know what our benchmarks are and how we're going to determine success. And the reason is that a lot of research shows that students who are reading below grade level at the end of third grade are much more likely to exhibit behavior problems, drop out, or end up at risk as they move through the rest of their schooling. So I'd like to prioritize third grade reading if we're going to tackle some of our systemic disproportionality.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and my last one is from floated to me by a teacher. I'd like the district to consider the feasibility of making Election Day a holiday for the district, replacing Veterans Day. If that's not possible, I'd like the district to consider implementing a district-wide special curriculum on Election Day that focuses on civic engagement and the history of voting rights in the U.S. This could include mock elections, the Constitution as a living document, discussions of poll taxes, the Voting Rights Act, women's suffrage, etc. I realize that these topics are covered in standard curriculum, but a day of focus will highlight the importance. Reason, I think it's important for us as a district to demonstrate our commitment to reducing disproportionality in education. In our current national conversation, I frequently hear leaders state that the way to affect change is to vote. And so this is a way for us to help our students, many of whom come from populations that have been historically disenfranchised.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I don't agree with the Veterans Day thing.
With what?
Getting rid of Veterans Day.
Oh, that's fine.
No.
That's fine. Mostly I just want to talk about it. And that's it.
Okay.
In case, if you
Very
need
good.
more, I can make more.
Administrative reports.
None this evening, Mr. President.
Oh, we're so disappointed. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.